So happy news year to everyone. Welcome and thank you. Thanks for coming along, being with us all through the year of 2020. It's been quite a year. I know that all of us had this sentiment, New Year's Eve and New Year's, that thank God 2020 is over. It couldn't get any worse. Bring on 2021. And here we are. We just went 6 days. We're 6 days into the new year. We're not a week into it. And what's the proper phrase? Holy F. We almost lost our democracy yesterday. So anybody thinking this year is going to be better than last year, there's no evidence to support that. Last year was a year. I've been in journalism and covering news for 47 years. Last year was the year where there was the most news ever to cover. We were overwhelmed entirely. I mean, with the pandemic, the wildfires, the shutdown economics, the distance learning for our kids and families and teachers, the nonprofits, like the documentary film festival, Gene's there, and everywhere else in all the communities that tried to pivot and keep their nonprofits alive and keep their great cultural events alive. We were right there alongside of them, and it was just quite a challenge. Everything was a challenge. Nothing was routine. As journalists who had to report in place, who had to learn how to Zoom like we're doing now, working with our local public officials who meet virtually via Zoom and recordings. We've all learned this together and pivoted together. It's been a lot of challenges, and it's led to a lot of permanent changes in how we're going to cover local news and how the local news gets presented, and how local news readers receive and get their news. On May 21, Sonoma West Publishers ceased the print versions of 3 of their 4 newspapers. We still print the Hillsborough Tribune once a week, but Sonoma West Times and News, Cloverdale Reveille, and Windsor Times are digital only now. We made that digital pivot, and I was very scared what might happen. It felt like jumping off a cliff. We called it a pivot, but it was really just a leap off a cliff without a parachute. And I was very pleasantly surprised. Our readers have followed us. Our readers have made the digital pivot. You guys here on the call and others. We've lost very few of the legacy print readers. The ones we've lost are the folks that don't have internet access or are just the most extremely stubborn. I'm just not going to try to read that on my phone or my iPad. I just give up. It's only been a handful today, and as we close the year, Sonoma West Publishers and its 4 legacy newspaper audiences are being read by more readers than ever in our 156-year history. We were updating our readership and audience numbers, but with our daily newsletters that Heather leads, the website, which we update almost daily, constantly, and some of the special print publications we still do, the social media feeds we do, we have an audience. We have a consistent audience that basically totals about 100,000 people on various platforms, and they're very consistent. They're very loyal. There's 2 challenges. I'm running out of time. 2 challenges. The readers need to be committed and convinced that they need to pay a little more for the news, because the $5 a month that we used to charge doesn't come close to paying for the upkeep, salary, payroll, and the eating habits that our journalists like. Our journalists are here. We write for food. Give us food and we will write for you. And we've lost the business model of newspapers. Is the old one is dead. Commercial advertising is going away. Google and Facebook totally took it away from us. That was happening before the pandemic. It's never coming back, but that was 80% of our revenue. And the only way we can replace, there's other ways I guess we could replace it, but our idea of replacing that is to go out into the community, convince the community that we are a public good, we're the public trust, and we deserve the extra support to keep the local communities informed. And frankly, and you will see this, you're seeing this today, the news outlets today are keeping democracy alive. I mean, they held the Capitol Police accountable. You know, the chief resigned because he got pressured. You didn't do your job. You know, I am one of the journalists right now demanding and editorializing that Donald Trump resign. And I'm a reputable source. I'm not a political entity. I gain nothing. I'm not partisan about that. For the good of the country, that's a journalist position. So one of the answers we have, or the big part of our answer is that over 2020, with a lot of partnership and help, we created a nonprofit, the Sonoma County Local News Initiative, and it's a big piece. It's the piece, really, of local journalism going forward. So I failed at the top to introduce some of the people you see on the screen. Maybe before I introduce Nancy Dobbs, who's going to talk now, the president of the Sonoma County Local News Initiative. If you journalists could raise your hand a little bit so the other folks can see you. So there's Heather Bailey, and there's Catherine Minkowitz, and Camille Escovedo. So after Nancy gives us an overview of the nonprofit, we're going to hear from those three journalists and what their life and career and profession was like in their pursuit of news through 2020. After that, we want to open it up for a dialogue and questions. But right now, I'll introduce again Nancy Dobbs for the update on the nonprofit.
Thanks, Raleigh. I'll be pretty quick because I know you all are really interested in hearing from the journalists and reporters that are gathered today. And also in the bit of the tone that Raleigh was setting about the events yesterday, feeling pretty serious about our job today. I don't know if you heard, but during his remarks today, President-elect Biden reminded us that tragically, one of the very central pillars of our democracy, a free press, has been vilified and mocked and scorned for the last 4 years. So we've got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of work to do both at a national level and a local level to regain the trust and to remind ourselves and remind our community how very vital our free press is to a healthy community. Here in our community, as Raleigh alluded to, we also need to recreate the financial model to support an available, accessible, accountable local media. And that, as Raleigh said, is what the Sonoma County Local News Initiative is about. We created this nonprofit, and through the nonprofit, it is our intention to replace the lost advertising revenue that Raleigh alluded to. And that revenue is going to come from all of us, and it will sustain our vital local journalism. Just like, as we're all familiar with PBS and NPR, we're going to encourage you to support the papers because of the value that you receive from the papers and the value you put on having this as a valuable community asset that we all benefit from. And we like to think that just as a university or a museum or a library, just like that, the local free press, locally owned and locally controlled press is a jewel in the crown of a healthy democratic community. So we're going to be asking for your support. In fact, we're asking for it right now. And Raleigh, if he's got his finger on his technical job, is going to put up a screen that has our website on it. Right, Raleigh?
Working on it.
Working on it.
Keep going.
Okay. So again, going to that website, making a donation is a really critical part of succeeding. fundamentally $200,000 has been lost in revenue. Again, as Raleigh said, both through the pandemic, but also the encroachment of Facebook and Google over the last years. So that's the website. Can we see the address?
No.
Or no, okay. So Sonoma County Local News Initiative, if you Google that, you'll come to this website. Tells you a little bit about it, who's on the board, who's on our advisory committee, and also there's obviously an opportunity to donate. We believe that all together as a community, we will dig deep to replace the lost revenues. And we will remember and recommit ourselves to the kind of journalism and local reporting that we're just about to hear about with the Sonoma West team. As you're listening to them, as you're listening to these very talented women, please remember that your donation and your support is what's going to enable them to continue doing the wonderful work that they're doing and have been doing for years and years. So that's the importance of your support to Sonoma County Local News Initiative. You'll be hearing from us. Back to you, Raleigh.
Thank you. So, so we do have Heather, Catherine, and Camille here. Zoe Strickland, another editor with the Cloverdale Reveille and Healdsburg Tribune, has a conflict. She's at a virtual birthday party for her grandmother, who's 90 plus years old. So there's still priorities in life, COVID or not. And I think you got to be at your grandmother's birthday party. Heather, you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Heather Bailey. I am the editor of the Windsor Times newspaper, and I am also the editor of the newsletter. So if you're a newsletter subscriber, the missives that you get every morning, Monday through Friday, those are me. I am pretty darn close to a Sonoma County native. I wasn't born here, but we moved here when I was 7. Went to school at local schools, moved to the East Coast in the middle of college, and was there for 13 years, where I met and married my husband. And we moved back here to Sonoma County in 2006. We have a farm, train horses and breed goats and breed chickens. I've been a journalist since I was in college. I came to it a little bit backwards, which is the other skill set that I have in my life is that I have been a professional rider and horse trainer. And my first journalism job was getting hired to work for a horse sports magazine. So I actually started the journalism side doing more sports events. I've covered Olympic Games, World Championships, traveled pretty extensively doing that. And then that kind of just evolved into a journalism career. But I've gone back and forth between the horse world and the journalism world and the writing world throughout my career. 2020 was certainly an odd year. I will say in some ways from a journalism perspective, it wasn't all bad in that the expansion of ways to attend public meetings, the fact that everything is virtual and on Zoom and recorded, has actually made my life a lot easier. If I had a sick kid, or if there was a conflict of 2 meetings on one night or something like that, I still had the ability to go back and watch the meeting and participate in the meeting, even if there was a conflict at that exact time. There have been some positive aspects of it. Obviously, when we just did our year in reviews, it struck me the biggest loss for me, honestly, was all of the events being canceled. It's quite fun to get to go and see the Windsor Day Parade or the tree lighting or the big graduation ceremony or anything like that. That's just a really enjoyable part of the job, and having them, just not happening this year was pretty sad. Like when I do year in review, I'm usually spoiling for choices of, how am I going to cut down the number of photos that I'm using from all the events that I've attended. And this year, that wasn't really my experience. It was pretty easy to just have 10. So.
I was doing some technical fiddling in the background. What what's the, can you pick out a highlight, low light, Heather? One story assignment, most challenging?
Well, I mean, anytime we're covering fires, that always feels real personal to me. It's important to me both that we're doing it and that I'm doing it, that I'm involved, but it's also difficult because it brings back a lot of difficult memories for me personally. But having now gone through 3 fires and being evacuated for 2 of the 3 fires and having family lose their home in one of the 3 fires, I am incredibly impressed by how much better we've gotten at this. And I enjoy telling that story. So it's weird to say that so in a weird way, the fire this year was both a highlight and a low light. I hate that we have to do it, but I'm impressed by how, as a community, we've gotten so much better at figuring out how to live in fire country.
Yeah. Catherine, what was the most useful new trick and tool you learned this year?
Gosh, this year.
2020.
Yes. I would have to say it would probably be Zoom, even though that's kind of a boring and 2020 answer. But as Heather was saying, it is incredibly useful having all these public meetings be on Zoom, because then you're not sitting in a council chamber all evening and then having to drive home at 9:30 at night and not getting home until 10:15 at night. So the Zoom certainly does make it convenient, although I have to say I have reached the point where I long for those uncomfortable chairs in the chambers and for the for the thrill of that.
Yeah, we've been able, because of the virtual space that all of our local governments and agencies have to, they have to continue to do their public meetings. They have to continue to make them accessible to the public, and they're not all Zoom. There's other tools they use, but it has made them more accessible to us as professional journalists, because we have gathered the tools and we've self-taught. Excuse me. But Heather, Catherine, Camille, if you might agree, the local governments have tried to remain accessible and keep government open, but it's only open to those that have the technical abilities. I'll flip this to Camille here in a second. There's a monumental decision in West County on whether they're going to consolidate Annalee and El Molino high schools, on how they're going to keep that secondary education at the best quality they can to what they can afford. And it's a very broad-based conversation and discussion. And, the need for technology, in some places is kind of disenfranchising some families and households out of that discussion. Right, Camille? You have access, but how many people are on those virtual meetings? It's not very many people in the community, is it?
Yeah, El Molino parents can really organize. But I actually haven't been able to see where, I don't know if this is just a technology thing I don't know how to do, which comes up a lot sometimes, of how many people. So sometimes there would be a lot of people, but I'm imagining there's so much that goes into making information accessible just as it is, even with things being in person. So to think that now so much of access to information or getting to directly participate in what local decisions are being made at schools or in local governments during this time is what I've learned through covering what's going on with the high school district and other things in West County is just that it's so complex, and it's historically in the county, it's like there's no way some of these things are happening without that scathing people. And so then we're left to kind of sit with how much is okay, or how does one address those accessibility issues.
So Camille, we stepped over your self-introduction. What kind of journalist are you?
I'm Camille. A very new one. I started at Sonoma West Times and News in early October. So I've been doing that. And previously I had been volunteering with KRCB Radio on the news side. And then before that doing high school newspaper things. So for me in the past, I haven't been there for the entirety of 2020. But for me, I've just been learning how to navigate all of these kind of bureaucratic structures that are sometimes that are important, but they're also just as I think about like, okay, how am I going to make this information accessible to someone who maybe doesn't have time because they're busy working, or they've got a million other things to do. They've got their children with them as they're working at home, or different kind of configurations of reality right now. That's been a big thing that I've been working through, of just kind of learning the basics of how to do this so that I can then become more proactive, because there's so much going on in West County and throughout the county. And I feel like in 2021, now that we're kind of used to how things are going under the pandemic, I would really like to put my efforts into staying ahead of what's going on and being able to identify those patterns to cover it.
So all you folks, you see Camille, Heather, and Catherine, and then Zoe, who's at her grandmother's birthday, and then I'm a very auxiliary partner to this, and we have Greg Clementi, our sports editor, who's covering no sports because there is no sports, so he scratches up something every week to give an update. And then we have contributors and columnists, to be sure, that contribute to our local news content, which is all original content. We don't pull anything out of the can. We write it all ourselves. That's the resources that's covering almost 100,000 people and 60,000 households in North and West Sonoma County. I mean, we're the essential information source for that broad geography. I mean, we kind of altered from 4 legacy newspapers in 2020, back to the Healdsburg Tribune that was first published in 1865. Our youngest paper in Windsor, the Windsor Times, was first published in 1987, and it predated the whole town of Windsor by 5 years, in 1992. We don't print those anymore. So we're now a news organization that covers the communities of the Russian River watershed from Cloverdale to Jenner, and we cover the people, the communities, and the watershed. And a lot of that watershed is natural habitat. It's a lot of agriculture, and it's small towns, and it's local commerce. And there's basically just 4 or 6 of us covering that whole wide expanse. There are daily miracles performed in the journalism world. I'm not patting anyone on the back, but that's, well, yes, I am. I'm Heather, Catherine, and Camille. I'm more than patting you on the back. And they are so extremely dedicated. I'm just appreciative over and over and over. Me and Sarah both. We get home at night and we see stories on our website or on the feed, and we read the newsletter in the morning, and we just go, how did they ever have the time to do that? And well, that's because Heather stays up till midnight sometimes and gets that newsletter finished. And
Yes, we're vampires. That's how we're pulling it off.
Yeah, and Heather and Zoe work on Sundays to get the Monday newsletter ready. So
yeah,
that's how local news is made, and it's a challenge and a struggle that's happening all across the country right now. And there's a lot of some successes, but there's also a lot of failures where, you know, news organizations like us aren't able to make it. They weren't able to be nimble enough to move forward into a pivot and get rid of the old news model and move to a new news model, you know, create a nonprofit structure or whatever. And they've just had to close and turn out the lights. And now there's a, you know, this widening expanse of what they're calling news deserts. And it's a big threat to you know, good communities and healthy communities, vitality, local economy, and good government, and bottom line, democracy. So far we're winning the good fight, but it's a huge challenge. And there's a role for every one of you on this screen. Everybody has a role in saving local news, and everybody benefits when they contribute to that. So the first part is that you're joining this and listening, and everybody's muted right now, but if you raise your hand, if anyone has a question or a comment, I'll be able to pick you out of my lineup. And Jan, does your cat have a question?
Raleigh, did you want me to do an intro or?
Yeah, Catherine, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. I wasn't sure if I missed that. I had to.
Oh, you don't want to? Yeah. She just wants to announce her marriage.
No. Well, that too, but hopefully eventual once the pandemic is over and we actually can. Anyways, my name is Catherine Minkowitz. I'm a reporter with the Healdsburg Tribune. I've been here for about 2 years now. And before the pandemic, you may have seen me walking down Center Street to downtown Bakery to get one of those scones, or maybe in the city council chambers watching a meeting, except now I'm always at home. I grew up in Marin County. I went to school there, and I went to college at San Francisco State. That's where I got my journalism degree and was on my school's paper. And from there, I've pretty much been doing that since. And then earlier today, Raleigh asked us a question that sort of struck me, and it was a tough question. He asked what story or experience sort of encapsulates the year 2020. And so I thought about it for a while, and I think this is more of an experience that I think encapsulates 2020. But for me, it was during the Walbridge fire when I got to do a ride-along with Healdsburg Fire Division Chief Fire Marshal Linda Collister. You know, with COVID, we weren't sure if we would be able to do these types of ride-alongs with first responders anymore. And I know for me, it was bizarre because I hadn't seen anyone in so long. I had been in my own pod. But Linda graciously let me come along for the ride. And I was just taking photos of all the different destruction and scenery that we would come upon. And a point that really kind of spoke to me was I had just taken a photo of all these trees that were completely decimated, all the down power lines, all the ash on the ground. And then after that moment, it was just so eerily quiet and still. And I thought, boy, this is a great metaphor for the year 2020. Eerie, quiet, and still. And so I think that experience really kind of hit home. And also because of the fact that not only did we have to wear N95 masks for the smoke, but we also had to wear a COVID safe mask on top of that. So it was all these elements coming together that I think encapsulated 2020, at least from a Sonoma County perspective. So, yeah.
I remember that assignment. You did a great job on it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the one thing that also struck me, though, is even though perhaps 2020 was an incredibly dark year, what struck me was just the selflessness and the care and the commitment that you get from these type of first responders and healthcare workers and all these types, all different professions. When you see that, it really reminds you how much we've come together in 2020, even though it's been difficult. So,
Yeah, let me elaborate on that story and the assignment you had, Catherine, because I think it was 2 years ago you were up there and you did a story on the Daniel School restoration. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was actually the first of 2020. It was the first week of January.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the neighborhood had just completed the restoration of the Daniels one-room schoolhouse that had been standing for 100+ years. How many years?
Oh, easily 100 years. And they had just finished an extensive 20-year renovation
Yeah.
of the schoolhouse.
So then in August, you went up in the fire zone and you saw what was left of it?
Nothing was left of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you care? You're not from here.
Well, it took me so hard because, when you interview folks and do stories such as that, stories that follow a nonprofit project or the renovation of a schoolhouse, you really sort of get to know these people. And for 15 minutes or 20 minutes when you're interviewing them, you're sort of part of their world. So it just really hit me hard to think all this work that they put into all these years has been completely lost. And I think that's why I care, because we have these connections with different folks every day, and even though we have to try to remain emotionless through it all and unbiased, sometimes it still hits you when you think about it. So
Anyone have a raised hand yet? Nancy?
Is Camille still with us? She's not
Yes.
on my screen, so I can't tell.
she's there at the corner.
Okay, Camille, I was wondering whether or not, do you focus then on West County issues? Is that why Raleigh asked you about the high schools, or is that just part of your beat?
Yes, I'm assigned to West County as a whole.
Mm-hmm. So across all the topics, whether it's education or city council or like that.
Right. Although, as I'm gaining experience as a new reporter, a lot of my focus in the last couple months had been kind of carving out a beat. I guess education as a beat in general, but really specifically with the high schools. That's been my experience.
Yeah. Chris, you have to unmute. Chris Dawson, unmute.
So I was curious, Raleigh, some of the stories you own completely yourself, the Anley Amelino school thing. But when you get on a story like the fires, and you're out there, you're out there with national news providers, regional ones, state ones. What's your decision-making process to decide on what story to cover that's going to be unique for me? I mean, when there's a fire, I have a lot of places to go to get information. How do you guys decide what to cover and what you let other people cover?
Yeah. Heather, Catherine, and Zoe could give you a better answer, but I think, there's a national scope of the climate change that led to the, the spread and consistency of the wildfires. But I think we tend to focus on the local, personal level. We follow the heroes around. We do profiles on the local responders and the heroes, and we focus on the local loss and the neighbors, like the Daniel Schools loss, etc. So, but we don't lose track or sight of the fact that that there's a global piece to the wildfire and climate change story in California. So we don't forsake that or give that up to the New York Times or anyone else, because that's a piece of it. But we I mean, you could pin the label on us that we're hyper local. We want the more local connected story as we can. I don't know if Heather or Catherine might have a different answer to your question, but I think that's our mind.
The answer wouldn't be terribly different, but I would just say that fires are very personal. And if you haven't gone through one and don't know that, then consider yourself very lucky. But on average, the national news, they're interested in the big whys and the big whats, which is very important. Those are very important stories to do and very important pieces of information. But for me, I'm more interested, if I'm looking at a story, and this applies to more than fires, but I'm more interested, NBC is never going to do a story on, a guy who stood in his backyard with a garden hose, kept his, grandmother's rose bushes safe from the flames. That, the chances of them finding that story are very small, but that is a story that we can do, and that's a story that we can bring to life. And we can also, this is going to sound odd and direct answer to your question, but there's also the follow-up, because things do rise from the ashes after fires. And by the time that happens here, usually the national stories have all moved on, but we're still here, and we're able to cover those stories of what it looks like 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later.
Yeah, a lot of, Chris, not to go too deep into this, but a lot of what we, like Heather was just saying, we're here after the fire is put out and after it's done. And like back to the 2017 Tubbs fire, which was our first broad scale experience. We didn't realize the response at the time. We had a failed communication system. We lucked out of that we only lost 42 lives in that fire, because we didn't have Nixle and SoCo Alert and those communication networks at the time. And, we followed up as the county and first responders and others put that better system together. So we provided a lot of accountability, just reporting on their progress and, the new practices, et cetera. We partnered, it might not, I think that's an okay phrase to use now. Journalists in the past, you wouldn't partner with your local elected officials. That used to be kind of an adversarial position where we just held them accountable. Well, after the 2017 Tubbs fire, we actually partnered with Supervisor James Gore, and Stuart Tiffin was on our staff at the time, and he did ride-alongs and did research and did reporting on that issue, on what do we do for the fire next time. Stuart did such a good job on putting those pieces together that Supervisor James Gore hired Stuart away from me and made him his field aide. And Stuart's at the SoCo Central of the government working on that. So Heather, Catherine, Camille, don't get any ideas, but don't wait for the next one. But that's the difference, Chris. But it's a lot of it's hyper local, providing the context, and then the connectivity. And the other thing, there were a few moments in the wildfires, and Catherine had several of these. Some happened, some didn't, where we had some kind of misconnections. But we would hear folks that had unique stories around, hey, this team saved my property. Can you profile them? This happened up in my neck of the woods, and it was a problem. Can you spotlight and write about it? So the readers are ears, eyes, and nose in many places. I did a lot of that around I saw Betsy on the call from Acorn on the call here. I did a lot of that around the smoke taint and the harvest, which was a real, mostly disaster and a complicated, very, very complicated story that rolled out differently and depending on which venue you were in. And there was a lot of misinformation around the national press and international press around what the 2020 wine grape harvest was in Sonoma County. And I talked to, 20 plus growers and winemakers, et cetera, to really get a granular view of that story, which actually is still being developed. And there's a lot of it we're not going to know for 2 or 3 more years. And what's happening in the cellars and in the even in the bottles once they start happening. But there's another version of hyper local. Gene, unmute. Unmute. There you go.
Hi. So I don't know if I can quite put this into the correct context, but I view through the documentary film festival hundreds of stories every year about people, how they wake up in the morning and face whatever the morning where they are gives them, what they have to overcome. And what continues to impress me is the importance of knowing who we are locally, what our community is like, is not very different from the stories of each of the people I see, whether in Iraq, in Yemen, in Belarus, in Cairo, or in London, or wherever you want to put it. And the importance of being able to grab on to the local stories of what's happening to us is also to be able to make direct connection with humanity in every corner of the world. And that is paramount in the preservation of local journalism. That's all I have to say.
Nicely said.
Yeah, I'm inspired.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Oh, I mean, I probably shouldn't get more inspired. I'm already overdoing it. I better watch it.
Jean, what's happening with the film festival this year?
We're going on.
Great.
We're moving to June because we think by June we might be able to actually congregate for at least one or two live events. We're in the final stages of going through our program now, of putting that program together. We had a 40% increase in submissions this year. Filmmakers are out there eager to share their stories. They love our community. They love the way film and documentary film in particular is appreciated by our community, our audience, and how they connect with the rest of the world. And that's what's so terribly important to us. I do want to say that not all documentary is deadly serious. We have great fun films that are coming in, a terrific amount of animation, but it's a way for people to express themselves, what they see, and to give us a glimpse through documentary lenses of what's happening now, so that we, as your mission is, can make critical decisions from what's happening, not what's told and aggregated, but what someone saw at a particular moment through a lens. Here it is. You take the information and think and make decisions for the
Great.
future. And
Yes.
that's what's happening. Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah.
To get me started. And I want to say that we've been really thrilled to be able to work with Northern California Public Media and explore ways of reaching out to a wider public, what these filmmakers have to say.
Maybe another collaboration with Sonoma West too.
Oh, you bet. Oh, heavens. Yes.
We've done a
We've got
few.
investigative journalism ideas like, well, another time.
That's Nancy, that's how we met Lowell Bergman, through the
Yep.
documentary film festival.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Kind of.
Yeah, and
Yeah. I'm so proud of that.
and he's a friend we kind of can't get rid of right now. So nor would we want to.
Oh, do you
No.
want to?
I
No,
so appreciate what, oh, sorry. Go ahead,
Go
Ron.
ahead. No, please.
Oh, I just so appreciate what Jean just shared. And I just think this whole time, and just looking at humanitarian struggles and political things that have been going on in the past year / forever, I try to channel what you are describing. Like what you're describing is something that I really try to tap into when thinking about providing hyperlocal coverage for communities, and how there's so much going on that looks far away, but really the most incredible instances of change or of civic engagement and civic engagement that we would want to encourage in the local areas, when I see local communities completely, I don't know how to describe it, really observing the power that they do have in their local arenas.
Mm.
I think that's been so breathtaking to watch communities across the country do, and anything to be a part of capturing what people do ground level here in Sonoma County or in West County or in our different areas, I think there's a lot of history to be documented.
Yeah.
And that history is created by ordinary people, or people that we don't ever learn the names of. And in a local newspaper, you get to learn the names of those people who are actively thinking of solutions to problems facing us and facing the rest of the nation and the world.
One of the big impetus or purposes of doing what we're doing right now with this local news forum is through 2020. Well, I said there was more news than ever to cover and report on, and limited resources and new business model challenges, etc. Us as journalists and us as fellow community members, we've gained a lot of technology ability, and we can Zoom, etc. But we've lost a lot of face time. I mean, I don't, when's the last time you hugged somebody that you wasn't in your own household? We've lost that, and as journalists, we've lost face time. I don't know if I don't think I'm not real good at this in any great year. I don't know if I made any new friends last year, because I never I never had an opportunity to meet anyone. This past year I did. I mean, I can't remember everyone, but I did about four to six obituaries of local people. And I write obituaries around prominent people, or people that were natives, people that have lived here a long time. Maybe they're just an auto mechanic and an Annalee graduate, like Daryl Ramondo in Sebastopol, but he was a lifelong volunteer firefighter, and he meant a hell of a lot to a lot of people. He's one name that comes to mind. And there's 4 or 5 others that I wrote. If I go back a little bit further, there's Bob Close and Susan Schwartz, who I wrote their obituaries for, and there's others. I'm going back too far with Bob and Susan because they did have closure. They did have memorials. Bob did. Susan's was private, but the people that died in 2020 never had a memorial. Their families never had a funeral. They never had a congregation. They never had that face time, and there's not a completeness there. And when I would finish those obituaries and write those stories, and I talk to the family, and the last paragraph was, well, when it's COVID safe, we'll have that gathering, we'll have the memorial. Well, for some of those families, it's going to be 2+ years from now. So, that was just a big loss in 2020. The personal interaction and interface. So we're missing that, and it's a big part of what we need to have back. And I hope the first thing we can figure out is how to do that. And I'll count on Reverend Bob Jones to help us figure that congregational part out. He's over there listening. I also saw Todd Everett down here. Todd, you need to talk to Nancy or someone on the local news initiative board. You have something to contribute. You have some thoughts and ideas. Todd's a big supporter of hands-on learning, career technical education, and student journalists, etc. And the local news initiative is doing quite a bit of work with local student journalists. So Todd, let me help you get connected when you're ready. Barry made the newspaper today at Sonoma West, not in a happy, sad way, but I hope in a satisfactory way. Barry, that wackobb.net is headed off into the sunset. A pretty well-deserved retirement and a great long run of community service. Let's carry on the partnership, Barry, because you propped up Sonoma West Publishers, and you had our back a few times, and we collaborated quite a bit. So let's carry on with that. We're 5 more minutes to go. I want to preview, if I'm able to share the damn screen. See if I can. Here we go. Is that showing up halfway decent?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's a very timely Zoom event, journalism based at Sonoma West Publishers and the local news initiative, and excuse me, NorCal Public Media and Sonoma County Library System is hosting January 28th. I'm sorry it's so timely, but we will be hosting a conversation on how our democracy almost died, on a similar format to what we're looking at right now. The most impressive part of this piece is thanks to the inspiration of John Greck, the history teacher at El Molino High School. He said, is there any way we can invite every history high school student in Sonoma County to know about this and attend? And thanks to the Sonoma County Office of Education, we're blasting this to every county history teacher and in their weekly newsletters to promote media literacy and civic engagement on a extremely timely topic. So
I think it's important to also say that the author is Occidentally born and bred citizen who is now a professor at Harvard, isn't he, Raleigh? I think so. So it's going to be a great conversation with someone who really knows this community.
Yeah, and we're going to help him sell some books too, I think, right, Teresa?
Good for the bookstore.
Well, at least through
Yes, we are.
Yeah,
That's
one way or another, and we're convincing the Sonoma County Library to load up on some e-editions, so
Great.
the local students can basically get free access to read the book. So it's that kind of initiative, Nancy, that the local news initiative is focused on going forward. I mean, I know we don't have specifics on what we're going to do after that, but if you want to tell us what's ahead and where we're headed, and what kind of help, support, or feedback we might need at the nonprofit.
Sure. I think that these chats, these get-togethers, and certainly the one with Daniel Ziblatt in a week or two, is indicative of both what we at the local news initiative and certainly what Raleigh and his team at Sonoma West want to do is have stimulate a lot more community engagement. That we feel that the heart and soul of a community is our ability to communicate and talk to each other, and that the newspapers, whether they're digital or print or skywriting, are an important tool in connecting a community. And that means that they as reporters and we as fundraisers, frankly, need to engage in conversations with you all about what you want to see from your local newspaper. What stories do you want us to do more coverage of? What are we missing? Could we be doing better? How can we dig deeper to make us a stronger community? And it's that kind of collaboration between our nonprofit fundraising, between the journalists at Sonoma West, and between all of you, that we create that community. It doesn't happen by magic. It happens by hard work, by focus on communication, and by focus on, as Jean was saying so beautifully, hearing each other's stories and understanding what's affecting other people. That's what we're all about. And that's what, again, I'll be cross about it. That's what your financial support is going to make possible, both sustaining Sonoma West, but also growing us to be a stronger and deeper community communicator and a deeper community. That's how we get through the harrowing experiences that Heather and Catherine were talking about. That's how we help each other. That's how we keep each other's back, because we know each other. And that's, where Sonoma West comes in. And again, Sonoma County Local News Initiative is looking to you for individual donations. If you have access to family funds or family grants, or if you own a business and want to become a business member of Sonoma County Local News Initiative, that's what we're here for. That's what we exist for, is exactly for this kind of work in our community. So don't forget it.
Nancy, that was so polished. It sounds like you've been doing that for 40 years.
I don't have a tote bag, and I don't have a mug. I just have democracy.
David?
Nancy, I just want to tell you, while you've been talking, I've been trying to log on to the website and it's not letting me in. So I don't know if there's an issue with it or not, but.
And I don't know who's talking.
Oh, it's Dave Leff.
Oh, Dave, I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Yeah, there can be a little trick, and once we show it to you, you'll be good. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you, Dave.
We do have that little glitch. So here's the send off. So, ongoing until we can show up at each other's birthday parties, or the grandmother's birthday parties, until we can congregate for memorials and lost loved ones and community leaders. We're going to have to keep meeting like this. It's not that bad. We plot this out to be one of the first reader forum, a local news forum of many, maybe every week. And we want to grow the audience. The journalists, we need face time. We need voice time. We have a busy agenda. We can Zoom all day at public meetings, and we can cover county land use permits. If we only wanted to write about cannabis projects, that's a full-time job that we're not getting to that much, but we need more dialogue with our readers. So, one of the real basic asks is come back when you hear the invitation again, share it with a friend. The best news, hyper and local news especially, is a conversation. It's a two-way communication. It's not a one-way communication. So, everybody benefits from keeping local news alive, and everybody has a role to play. And right now we need to build some strength in numbers. There's no doubt about that. We have some financial struggles right now to get through this pandemic and get to the other side of our new business model. So again, you all have a big role, and I see many of you who have already done that. Just about every one of you has, that I'm looking at. Teresa had her hand up. I hate to allow her to have the last word, but I guess that's where we're going.
Well, what I wanted to share with everyone is that we will have this on Facebook Live, or on our Facebook. We will have it on YouTube, and we will also add the link to the nonprofit. So anyone who can't reach the site right now, we will have that link available for you.
There you go, David.
All right.
So thanks, everyone. It was enjoyable. It was a great conversation. Good to see faces. I've heard that Bob Jones is out there, but now I'm a true believer again. So wave your cane at me, Bob. Yeah, I knew it was right there. Okay.
Thanks, Raleigh.
Thank you, everyone. Here we go.
Good
All
night.
right, thanks.
Have a good evening.
Night.
All right.